go live and launch our event. You can hear me?
Yes, Commander, we can hear you. I'm just waiting to get to the studio. Do you know what the issue is? Dramendra, we're live. You can go ahead.
Hello. Sorry?
We're live. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've been given the go-ahead. A very warm welcome to all of you. I believe there's hundreds of you on live stream on YouTube. A very warm welcome to all of you. It's good to see so many of our speakers. We have a stellar class of speakers from both within Europe and Africa. And the topic of our discussion over the next 2 hours is about oceans, ocean governance, and how can we foster a better, more improved cross-continental relationship on ocean governance between Africa and the EU. It comes on the hot heels of the Brest Summit, the One Ocean Planet Summit, and it will lead into the official Africa-EU Summit that's taking place next week. And this event is a side event as a part of the Africa-EU Week. And I'm here on behalf of the Africa-Europe Foundation. My name is Dharmendra Kanani. I'm Chief Spokesperson and Director of Friends of Europe, and here as your moderator for this, what I think appears to be and will be a very interesting, energetic, and diverse conversation about ocean governance. Just to remind you all that you can post your questions through Twitter, so you've got hashtag Africa-EU Week. And obviously make sure that you engage with both our speakers but yourselves, and I'll be able to hopefully take as many of your questions towards the end of this conversation as I can. It's important to note that this debate is bilingual, so you can tune in English and or French, so that you're comfortably assisted in whichever language you feel that suits you. So in terms of the actual discussion that we're about to have, it's really important to note that this is in partnership with the government of Portugal and DG MARE as a part of this conversation. And as I said, we're very grateful to those partners, but also the wider partnerships that we have with governments in Africa, but also the EU. And we have a number of representatives from member states here and from African governments that will comment on what is obviously a major issue. It might occur to you that, why now? It seems ridiculous that the ocean, which is literally our life well, it is our life well in terms of oxygen, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of carbon capture, in terms of being able to determine our weather, in terms of everything that we know, our life as we know it is within this mother of a life well, which provides us with so much. Yet, our consumption habits have outstripped its resilience and its capacity to survive. But all is not lost. And that's why for some 30, 40 years, people have been attempting to instigate instruments, multilateral agreements, global agreements. But what we do know is waste in the ocean has only tripled or quadrupled. We know acidity levels are beyond what they should be. And we have hazardous fishing continuing to take place. It's also the place that the ocean still remains 90% of our global trade. And also there is tourism. So all of our lives in various ways are affected and we affect it, which is the ocean. So this is a very timely debate. Let's hope that in the context of this side event, that we're able to come up with some proposals or some ideas as to how we take practical action, because actually time is running out. in terms of ocean resilience and the ocean's welfare, and therefore our livelihoods into the future. We just need to be able to get a grip of that reality that the ocean matters to us every day, over generations, and into our livelihoods, into the future of our planet. So on that note, it gives me great pleasure, firstly, to invite our first contributor. We have with us Commissioner, the EU Commissioner for the Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginius. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. As I said in my context opening remarks, this is should be and has suddenly become a very hot topic. And I know that we'll come back to, we have an MEP who's been at the Brest Summit to get a sense of where that got to. But tell us from your perspective, in terms of your remit, why should oceans be placed at the core and a priority of Africa-EU relationships and partnerships? Over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, a warm welcome to this Africa-Europe high-level dialogue on ocean governance, and it's a great pleasure to see so many of you, even so only virtually. And let me first express my appreciation for having Her Excellency Josefa Sako with us. My gratitude goes as well to the speakers who will join us a bit later. A big thank you, of course, to everyone for making yourself available, and a special thanks to the government of Portugal and the Africa-Europe Foundation for co-organizing this event with us. So now, going into your question, I think, let me begin also with a question. What is or should be the place of the ocean in the Africa-Europe partnership? And I think that is maybe the key question of today's dialogue. And before I try to answer, let's have a look at a few figures from the United Nations and the UCD. The ocean covers nearly 3/4 of the planet and produces half of the oxygen on Earth and absorbs 25% of CO2 emissions. Without it, there would be no life on the planet. The ocean provides 15% of the animal protein we eat, even up to 50% in least developed countries. And without it, we would all be starving. Ocean-based industries contribute roughly 1.3 trillion to global gross value added. Marine fisheries provide 57 million jobs globally. Without the ocean, millions and millions of households would not have a decent living. This is impressive, a nice sales pitch for the ocean. However, every year up to 12 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean to stay there for many centuries, trapping and killing sea life. 60% of the world's major marine ecosystems are in a bad shape, and between 30 and 35 of critical marine habitats have already been destroyed. And even though we rely so much on fisheries for our food security, we waste about 10 million tons of fish annually, enough to fill 4,500 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or rather to feed 500 million of people. So yes, I think that the ocean should play a big role in the EU-Africa relations. After all, we share a total of almost 60,000 kilometers of coastline, and we are already collaborating on so many fronts. On many occasions, the European Union and the African Union have emphasized their mutual interest in advancing a common and prosperous ocean agenda, because we know that when we coordinate our actions, they get amplified and they are far more effective in the long run. So let's put the ocean at the core of our partnership, and importantly, let's add action to our words when we are looking at global progress towards the United Nations 2030 agenda cycle. And in particular, as the G14, we see that more action is needed quickly. So only a short time remains to achieve the agreed targets, and we still have a long way to go by working together. And that's how we can make a difference.
And how, in practical terms, how do you see this moving forward? We have the significant week next week. Just tell us, what are you going to do about making sure this happens as a priority?
So as I mentioned earlier, the cooperation on ocean-related matters between Europe and Africa is already very close along multiple strands of actions. And sustainable fisheries through our partnership agreements, maritime security, including the fight against piracy and illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, or the sustainable development of our blue economies, to name some examples. But shared agendas should not hide that more efforts are needed to progress and overcome divergences or misunderstanding, even in areas of common interest. Such efforts can only be built on a strengthened and more regular dialogue. So, inspired by successful initiative, for instance, in the agriculture sector, my services reflected upon the possibility to set up an African-European task force on ocean governance. And they commissioned a feasibility study. This work substantially benefited from comments and suggestions from stakeholders, and I know some of them are behind their screens today. So big thank you for your insights and contributions. And the study now finalized and available online. Today we will present the main findings to you, and I can tell you already that the idea of setting up a task force on ocean-related matters has triggered much interest on both sides of the Mediterranean, which is why today I'm very pleased to announce that we have decided to establish a bicontinental cooperation mechanism in the form of an ocean strategic group. And we strongly believe that this group can promote closer cooperation with Africa on ocean governance, building on and complementing the work already ongoing. It will increase the level of understanding between the two continents and expand the sharing of knowledge and capacity building. And it will also be a joint vehicle to increase the momentum around ocean governance worldwide and call for stronger commitments to achieve the 2030 agenda. The mandate of the group will be twofold. Firstly, to agree on common priorities and objectives, as well as specific thematic work streams. And secondly, to define a plan of action so that those priorities and objectives are translated into concrete proposals and projects. The practical modalities of this strategic group are still in the making. And luckily, we will not be alone in the endeavor. Indeed, the European Commission has decided to partner with the Africa-Europe Foundation, and this is another very good piece of news. The Foundation's expertise and reputation will be a great an asset, and I look forward, of course, to this new collaboration.
Excellent, thank you. So I take that as a coup in the sense that you've actually given us exclusive information. Thank you very much for that. And thank you also on behalf of the Africa EU Foundation that that you've had confidence and trust in the foundation to operate as an independent arbiter and be able to kind of really dig into policy issues and provide practical outcomes and solutions. So thank you very much. I hope we've all been listening to that. The announcement was made here just now. So there will be a task force, a cross-continental task force, but actually with almost a global view as well. So I think that's going to be very interesting in terms of Europe's role, Africa's role, as two burgeoning continents that have a huge impact on the world at large. Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for that. And I hope that they could bring you back in a bit later. I want to turn to a perspective from Africa. So we have the African Union Commissioner in charge of Agricultural, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, Josefa Sacco. Josefa, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, moderator, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon.
Not at all. Good afternoon. Very good to see you. Thank you very much. Good, and it's good to have you with us. You've just heard the announcement from the commissioner, which I'm sure you're well aware of. From your perspective, what's your reaction? But also, why, from your perspective, in terms of your remit, a similar question as I posed to the commissioner, why should this agenda become core to the partnership between Africa and Europe when there are, people might say, multiple others that actually we should be focusing? Why is oceans the core priority?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, allow me to contextualize the oceans on the continent, on the African continent, because there are a lot of things that we are doing at the African Union Commission that we don't share. So I would like to share it, indeed. And you will see that it can justify for my keynote address why we really need to put it as a core in this EU summit. I thank you. Let me just try to contextualize the issue of ocean governance, ocean health, on our continent. Let me first of all try to acknowledge my colleague, His Excellency Sinkevičius, the Commissioner for Environment, Sea and Fishery of the European Union. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Sua Excelência Ricardo Serão Santos, Ministro dos Assuntos Marítimos da República de Portugal. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Excellency Nancy Kajiruti, who is the Principal Secretary, State Department for Fishing and Maritime Affairs in the Republic of Kenya. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency Elena Agrin, who is the Ambassador for the Ocean, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Kingdom of Sweden. Allow me to stand on the existing protocol due to the time. So it is a distinct honor to address this very important and timely dialogue on ocean governance in preparation to the European Union, African Union Summit this week. I welcome the opportunity to dive deep into why ocean must be placed at the core of the Africa-Europe partnership. Excellencies, at the core of the aspiration of the 6th EU-AU summit lies a shared search for prosperity and sustainability. That's what we are looking for our community, for our people. Our oceans offer a tremendous opportunity to combine both prosperity and sustainability. The ocean, it is said, represents a potential, and it was also said by my colleague, a potential economy of over $3 trillion in Africa. At this juncture, our oceans support us through ecosystem services, it was also said, such as the carbon capture potential of algae, seagrass, and phytoplankton ecosystem services, which largely go unaccountable for and which represent tremendous potential in blue carbon markets. Blue food, aquatic and seafood remain a key, if not the primary source of protein for millions on both the continent, both in Europe and in Africa, providing direct and indirect employment to millions, including women, because we are here to empower women and we know the role of women in the fishery industry. They don't go to the fishery and the value chain, but they are more on the marketing side. And we need to really strengthen their capacity so that they can be small or medium enterprises and reduce poverty on the continent. Ocean-based innovation are also changing the world in multiple ways. Renewable offshore energy, for instance, is among the way in which the ocean can contribute to mitigate efforts. Marine biodiversity remains an underexplored avenue for bioresources, especially for pharmaceutical purposes. So I think we have to tap this potential also. The African Union fully recognizes the vast potential of its Agenda 2063, of which we have about 47,000 kilometers of coastline, with 38 countries out of 55 of the African Union member states being coastal and island states. So that is why it is really important that it should be this area, this blue economy should be an area. Ocean governance should be really an area that we need to tap the potential. It is important that our ocean are key to the African integration agenda and its development prospects. The African Union therefore proceeded to entrench the blue economy within its process of institutional reform and adopting a blue economy, African blue economy strategy, which covers 5 important pillars that I can share it with you due to time, ranging from fishery to biotechnology and innovative industry. This is a new area that was just attributed to our department, and we are trying to implement our African Blue Economy strategy with partners. The issue of ocean governance has been a key priority at African level. As such, the African Union Commission we are working with the UNEP in developing an African ocean governance framework which seeks to promote sustainability and coherence in fragmented policies, instruments, and agency direction, while addressing gaps on environmental sustainability and supporting policy coordination. A series of comprehensive consultations have been going on with partners, bringing together all the stakeholders from African Union member states and our regional economic community, the RECs, and the scientific organization. We have been having a very good process going on, and so far it is clear that some priority of the African continent include, just shortly, training and capacity building of technical experts, access to reliable, coherent data, climate proofing vulnerability industries such as coastal tourism and artisanal fishery, 2 sectors which also took the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic. There is no denying that the vastness of our ocean poses a material challenge in mapping, assessing maritime natural capital, and effectively affecting these resources and these expenses. The high seas continue to be very, very, very lawless, while our territorial water poses a challenge to the capacity of our African Union member states. We have the shrinking, when we look at the shrinking of the Lake Chad, and we have the stress in the SADC region, we have a lot of problems with water. Partnerships are crucial in ensuring that African Union member states are able to meet this gap, while emerging technology are also playing in increasingly prominent role. I think with all this introduction and constitutionalizing context of our African maritime, I am still around to open for more questions.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for that fairly comprehensive overview, and looking forward to inviting you back in for comment as we progress through this discussion. But in terms of what we've heard so far, I think one of the key issues is going to be smart investment of money, because I don't think there's an absence of money, but also how can regulations really, really make a difference? And can some of the multilateral institutions and frameworks that we have really make a difference in a way that they've not been able to, with all due respect, but we've seen the ocean become more degraded since the past 50 years, despite those actions. So, but on that point, but it's a positive note. The fact that there's a task force is going to be, as you say, it's been mainstreamed into a number of agenda within the Union, and we look forward to seeing the progress of that. I'm now going to turn to Francesca. Francesca, who's been undertaking a study, the feasibility study, looking at the notion of, this cross-continental dialogue and partnership and cooperation on international ocean governance. And obviously referencing back to what the Commissioner earlier said about a task force. So, Francesca, walk us through some of the key points of what you've learned and what you wish to, I suppose, draw to our attention in this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dharmendra. So my name is Francesca. I'm a consultant at Rumble, and I'm here to walk you through the feasibility study that we conducted last year together with Wageningen University and, of course, the European Commission DG MARE, to basically assess the feasibility of establishing such a task force on policy cooperation and dialogue on international ocean governance. So the study, as I said, ran for a period of about 6 months, from September last year to February 2021. And the main objective of the study was to explore the feasibility of establishing a blue task force on ocean governance between EU and Africa. Specifically, we aim to build the case for the task force by trying to determine the needs for the establishment of such an initiative, but also which specific issues the task force could have the potential largest positive impact on. And basically, we started this process by performing a diagnosis of the current state of play. And then we proceeded to defining objectives and different design options for the task force. After the study, basically, we came to some recommendations and conclusions that we shared with the European Commission. To perform the study, we used several methods, such as desk research. We assessed different task forces. We performed cost assessments and SWOT analysis to assess the different options for the task force. But I would say the main input for our study was definitely stakeholder consultation. In fact, we consulted with around 67 stakeholders, both from the EU and African continent, throughout interviews and an online survey. Okay. And these stakeholders were both from public authorities, but also civil society, and we had different experts of programs that actually already work on cooperation between EU and Africa on ocean governance. So it was really a broad set of stakeholders that had a lot of insights on how this task force could look like. Over the course of the study, we understood, as our keynote speakers already kind of told us, that indeed EU-Africa relations have gained a very high profile on the EU's external agenda, and that ocean governance is indeed one of the main topics of this cooperation, and that the cooperation is already currently quite strong and long-lasting, but that in some aspects it can lack alignment. And therefore, throughout the study, we have understood that a dedicated task force could be an asset on developing strategies and recommendations for the future development of EU-Africa relations in this area. And in particular, the large majority of the stakeholders that we contacted agreed on the fact that we should have a dedicated task force on ocean governance. So indeed, there is a great agreement from stakeholders on the need for this initiative. We performed the study by starting with an assessment of existing task forces. And there are already many task forces organized on different topic areas between the EU and Africa. And through this assessment, we understood that task forces are made up of different design elements, as you can see on the slide, and that each of these design elements are interlinked. So for instance, the selection of the mandate, so what the task force should do, has a lot of implications on the thematic scope, but also on the actual structure. So how do you set up the task force? What are the members of the task force? So it became really apparent that the decision on what type of mandate the task force should have would have had a great influence on all of the other elements. And of course, we also understood that there are several options for the design of each of these elements. So potentially, there's really a lot of options to select from. And in order to districate ourselves within this myriad of options, we have come up with a series of criteria that helped assess the options and understand essentially which option would work best. The criteria were developed together with the Commission, but also on the basis of the feedback that we had received by the stakeholders. Throughout our work, it became apparent that the task force should be designed so as to be inclusive, so as to allow a broad variety of stakeholders to provide their input and have their own say when it comes to establishing this partnership of equals between EU and Africa. Also, it is important that the task force is effective, and so that it actually creates outcomes that are translated into tangible actions that would help achieve progress on the ground, so something that can be visible for stakeholders on the ground. And then it is also important that the task force adds value to what is already existing. So we said that there's already many cooperation initiatives between EU and Africa. And so it is important that this new initiative, this new mechanism is complementary to what is already existing and does not overlap, basically. In the course of the study, we assessed evidence, we talked to stakeholders, and on the basis of this, we came up with 2 consolidated options for the task force. And on the basis of discussions with the steering committee of the study, we have decided to further develop one particular option, which is this option B that you see on the screen. And I'm now going to walk you through the details of this option. Please bear in mind that these are our recommendations based on what we have found out throughout the study, and that the actual setup of the task force, of course, is in the hands of the European Commission and African Union counterpart. So the mandate that we propose for the task force on the basis of what we have seen in the study is both a strategic and operational mandate. This means that at first, the task force should aim to achieve a strategic alignment of key priorities and objectives between the 2 continents when it comes to ocean governance. And basically, the task force itself should define what are the main work streams that they want to work on. So what are the key elements, key topics that the EU and Africa want to work on. And then once these work streams are selected, we propose that task force members actually develop a shared action plan of concrete and tangible actions.
Oh, Francesca, I think we've lost you momentarily.
Achieved by the 2 continents when it comes to ocean. Oops, sorry.
So, Francesca, you may not be aware, we lost you momentarily.
Okay.
And also what you're not aware of is most people have not, well, no one's been able to see your presentation. So what I suggest you do now in the remaining time you have is perhaps just summate the key points of your presentation in terms of, where do we go from here? So you've got the feasibility study, you've set out the options for a 2-phase. So, looking at both the cross-continental membership, its mandate, a shared and owned agenda as we move forward. What's the next phase? What's the next? Take us to the end of your presentation, but bearing in mind no one can see it. So if you could just talk directly to me about it, that'd be helpful.
Okay. I was not aware that you could not see it. But yeah, essentially, we have set up a set of recommendations in terms of possible work streams of the membership. So who are the people that should sit on the task force? And what we suggest is that the task force lasts for 12 months and that it is a medium-sized task force. So with around 30 members that would work both on defining the objectives and then defining the actual work streams. And most of the work of the task force would focus on actually drafting these kind of shared action plans with tangible actions on what can be done to achieve progress on the different objectives of that have been selected for the task force. And what we propose as well is that the task force at the end of these 12 months produces a report that sets out the agreed priorities and objectives on international ocean governance between the two continents, and that sets out this action plan, so that there is also this aspect of transparency, so that people can see what is aimed to be achieved in the next decades when it comes to cooperation between EU and Africa. And we also foresee, we recommend that this report and the action plan is presented to stakeholders broadly.
Okay.
And the hope in the long term is, of course, that the setup of this mechanism helps increase the dialogue and create stable cooperation on ocean governance between the EU and Africa in the future, so that it's kind of the basis for long-lasting cooperation and regular cooperation. Really sorry that you couldn't see the presentation, but the study is available online on the website of the European Commission. So we can perhaps share it with the participants at the end, so you will all be able to have a look. Thanks a lot for
no, Francesca, thank you. That was again comprehensive, and apologies again. It's sometimes technicalities. We have to live with that, as we said earlier on. But that was very coherent. That was very clear. There'll be a lot of questions, I suppose, in terms of spending a year on about 7 topics to create agreed and shared agenda, where some, and I'm just being devil's advocate here, a lot of that information should be available already. We heard from the African, the African Union Commissioner, there's a lot of data already there. And I suppose it's a case of, how can you kind of speed this process up? But that's not for you. That's not the question for you. I know, I'm sure others may ask that question, but thank you very much. Been very much appreciated. I'm now going to take a contribution from Portugal, and I'm really pleased that we have the Portuguese Minister for the Sea, and that's Ricardo Serrano Santos. Ricardo, thank you very much for joining us. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. I hope you are listening to me. Okay.
We can absolutely hear you. So you've heard quite a bit so far from both an EU Commissioner, an African Union Commissioner, and you've had some background now on the feasibility study of a cross-continental dialogue and cooperation on ocean governance. Tell us from your perspective, given where you've made this a priority in Portugal, that you've been working on this. You're the Minister of the Sea for the Sea. How can this really make a difference? How can oceans be placed at the core of this partnership? Because we know what the issues are. We've already heard from commissioners why the ocean's important, but how can we get beyond words into an actual priority? Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear Dharmendra Kanini, and thank you for your moderation. But before I continue, let me send a special greeting to Commissioner and Ambassador Josefa Correia Sacco, whom I had the pleasure to meet in person. Yes, we have meetings in person from time to time. The meeting in person last month of November in Mozambique, sharing the Blue Growing event organized by the People's Republic of Mozambique, a very active and very interesting meeting. And let me also, of course, greet the European Commission and the Commissioner for Environment, Ocean and Fisheries. This in virtual mode, and let me tell that in virtual mode, we also share the stage we all three shared the stage during the EU-Africa Partnership in Action, implementing Africa's Blue Economy Strategy, one of the green talks that we're organizing during the Portuguese presidencies of the European Union. That was on the first semester of 2020. And also let me thank Francesca Finello. I don't know this study. I know that now I know that it is available on the site of the European Commission. I'm really very curious. It is. I was following with high interest the presentation that you were given, but unfortunately there was some acceleration, so I could not get your message, and some of the slides that were skipped, I think it were very important. I also want to greet the fellow panelists and all the people that is assisting to this conference. In fact, the importance of the European Africa Week and of deepening the partnership between our two continents cannot be enough overemphasized. We must continue to express it, voice it, say it, until it truly becomes a reality in every possible way. And this applies, and I'm very happy, this applies strongly to the ocean agenda. When I was in the European Parliament, I was involved on the EU-ACP countries plenaries, and the ocean was not very strong in the agendas, but it was strongly for myself during these times between 2014 and 2019, and we did a lot of reports on this area in view to strengthen the cooperation and the implementation of a strategy for the European Union and ACP countries that of course applies to Africa. I must say that 2022 is a critical year for the ocean, as we are all well aware. But it is also an opportunity to strengthen our common policy goals, or the policy goals that we want to be common, creating a route that hit us to Lisbon next June, but also to Egypt for COP27, where we hope that the ocean climate nexus will come out even more in force. And I must acknowledge the progress that was made in Glasgow on this ocean climate nexus. But replying directly to the questions that you sent and the topics that you sent in for motivating this discussion here, and I say the greater Africa-Europe cross-continental action on the ocean, and also the ways for the two continents make the most of this decisive year and the biggest bottlenecks in relation to ocean governance to be addressed. I would certainly say that a shared priority of the fight against IUU fishing. I see that was not on the top two of the presentation and the study presented by Francesca Finello, but I believe that this is one of the major concern. Fortunately, we see a trend in international ocean governance towards the need to firmly address this problem. And in the European Union, this is clearly a priority in terms of our common fisheries policy and its external dimension too. Sustainable regulated fisheries are essential to improve global food systems and to fight hunger. And I believe, I must say that the fight hunger is the number one ODS SDG, Sustainable Development Goal on the agenda 2030. However, throughout the world, seas and coastal areas are sometimes on the verge of collapse, subject to wrongdoing and practice that pursue short-term profits. This depletion, in some cases, of marine resources, in fact, jeopardize the ability of the environment to deliver long-term economic sustainable benefits. I refer to overfishing, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, along with other sustainable fish practice are critical problems. Let me say that, for instance, 1/3 of the assessed fisheries globally are overfishing, and according to the World Bank estimates, the sum of net loss to overfishing is at least 82 billion euros per year, including 9 billion euros per year from Africa. Additionally, in West Africa alone, more than 1 billion euros is lost each year due to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. The numbers are in fact huge and clearly show the importance of addressing this issue in several African countries, as it is important in other seas, and it is important in EU also. But the problem is global, and the solution needs to be found globally. That is why I would like to invite you to set this as a goal, believing that if both the African Union and the European Union establish the fight against IUU as a priority in our agendas, a big part of the packs is already walked. So I'm trying to influence the conclusion of the report of Francesca Finello. I would also like to recall also that the fight against IUU fishing is one of the goals of the SDG 14, the SDG 14.4, which aims to end overfishing and IUU fishing, and also other destructive fishing practices. And is a part of Africa's 2033 agenda and of the 2015-25 decade of Africa agendas and ocean. Other issues demand action from our continents, and action is underway. For instance, in the end of the current month of February in Nairobi, Kenya, our esteemed partner in the organization of the United Nations Ocean Conference, the United Nations Environmental Assembly, will take place, and the negotiations on a new agreement on marine pollution focused on plastics will hopefully be concluded. Portugal has been strongly committed to this agreement without forgetting that other forms of marine pollution and marine disturbance must be addressed. Thank you very much for your attention. Yeah. And
Ricardo,
that's what
Ricardo, thank you. Thank you very much.
At this moment.
No, thank you very much. And thank you for raising that issue that, hasn't been named in the way that you've just named it. In terms of illegal fishing, we also know that it's part of both a formal and an informal economy, and politics gets in the way, as we know. And so it'll be good to see how this moves forward. And as you say, in your partnership with Kenya, you will be organizing the Ocean Ocean Conference, UN conference. So it'll be good to see how that will become the priority or one of the priorities as we move forward. So thank you very much, sir, for that. So let me now bring in your contemporary from Africa. So let me invite Nancy. Hello, good afternoon to you. And you are, obviously, for those of you who may not be aware, Principal Secretary, State Department for Shipping and Maritime in Kenya. Very warm welcome to you from Kenya. And we've heard, obviously, the partnership that you have. Tell us a little bit about, I referred to the fact that, there's issues about money, there's issues about politics, there's issues about how do you kind of tackle this multi-million, billion-dollar informal economy around illegal fishing, and et cetera, and so forth. From your perspective, what do you see as the bottlenecks? Because we've heard a lot about what the problem is. We've had a lot of conversations about how a task force will work. But, from your perspective, you've been in the game and you're a seasoned politician, and your brothers and sisters on the continent and the EU. What do you see as some of the bottlenecks for you? And a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Allow me to start by expressing appreciation to the Africa-Europe Foundation, the European Commission Directorate-General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, and the government of Portugal for this invitation to this high-level dialogue focusing on ocean governance. Thank you. We've heard a bit about the problems, and I think, if I may say so, I think I could tap on three issues, the biggest problems that we could have in relation to ocean governance, and how we can address them, and how particularly the two continents can work together towards a mutually beneficial partnership. Let me say that Africa faces two major challenges in relation to ocean governance. The first one is limited funding, of course, and the second one is insufficient capacity. This is because of competing development priorities as a developing continent, which means that are allocated to, a very little of that is allocated to oversight ocean governance because of competing other priorities like health, universal education, food security, so many others. Then Africa also does have insufficient human resource and technological capacity for effective ocean governance. And also, you've alluded to it before, the enabling environment that's needed to foster solutions and joint implementation strategies. And the best way to make the enabling environment positive is to involve everybody. I believe that the strategic partnership between the European Union and Africa creates a promising environment to facilitate the sharing of knowledge that is key to foster capacity building, and also technology transfer in the context of ocean governance, but also to utilize the approach of a shared implementation of joint strategies. I also believe that with Africa being not so well industrialized, in terms of now with issues like ocean climate change coming in, particularly affecting the ocean, I think we have an opportunity to start a brand new page, to have industrialization in terms of meeting these challenges, industrialization that then takes into account the many facets and the many advantages that Africa has in terms of creating green energy and, green investment, I think. I submit, Chair.
Great. That was really very clear, very succinct. Thank you very much. So, what I take it from you've been very clear about what the twofold challenges are, and you're pointing almost to the fact that perhaps part of this is about taking a much more holistic view rather than simply an oceans view. And what I mean by that is a cross-cutting view of things around health, digital, climate change. And but the interesting point that I picked up was about the reference to potential for changing what we do around international development. And how does international development take account of the need to behave differently and fund differently around an area that has huge potential for green industrialization, but also economic and social welfare. So thank you for bringing that to the table in the way you have. And we look forward to seeing that being an area for discussion next week, but also in the months and the year ahead, especially in the June conference that you will be having in partnership with Portugal. Thank you very much, Nancy. We'll come back to you. I now want to turn to I think we have, let me just make sure that our Member of Parliament's online. Catherine, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Do you hear me?
Hello, I can hear
Hello.
you. Thank you. Very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. You are known, fated and well known for being a sailor. You're the first woman to do that global international event solo. You understand the ocean from a very different perspective, but also you're a politician. And you've been at the Brest One Ocean Summit, One Planet, One Ocean Summit. What's your takeaway from it in terms of, are you hopeful? Are you more hopeful as a result of it? What are your areas of cynicism, or what do you see as the bottlenecks in the way that Nancy set some of those out? So give us a sense of the feedback from what you witnessed and what you think we are likely to see happening in the next medium term. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you to the Foundation Afrique Europe. And sorry for, I'm in a car, I'm on the way for Strasbourg. I'm still in the car waiting, and I don't know if I will be with some colleagues, and it doesn't matter. I'm about to speak right now. And to answer your question, the One Ocean Summit has been a terrific event, and I think it's a real opportunity. 2022 is a big opportunity on all ocean issues, and especially on ocean governance. And first of all, before remaining the main topics that and the main issues that we spoke about, just to remember that the African continent is, and I will continue in French if you don't mind, and probably in English too. But je veux dire que
what I want to say is that the stakes concerning ocean governance in our relationships between Africa and Europe are, as it was probably already said at the beginning of the conference, stakes and challenges that concern knowledge, because we do not know the ocean very well, and we do not know the impacts of climate change. For example, on the travels of the fish populations, the impacts of waste or wastewaters that are not sanitized, and the impacts of growing demography on the African continents in the coastal areas, whereas the ocean is a source for development for the continent. And I believe that it is a true challenge, and there are challenges around preservation of our fishing. I heard that this has been mentioned by those who took the floor before me. I was a rapporteur for my group about different agreements with Guinea-Bissau, for example, Cabo Verde, Senegal, and others. And I have noticed that there is a true challenge of preservation of the populations, coastal populations as well, against illegal fishing and the pressure of Chinese fishing along these areas. We have major stakes and challenges also to help, especially women who are part and take part in Senegal, Togo, and in all this region of the Guinea Gulf. We have stakes and objectives for these women to be able to work and live from their fishing. So this Ocean Summit, first of all, it was reminded that 2022, there will be a succession of important events, and I believe that our relationships between the EU and African Union must truly, our two continents must come together on these discussions on the oceans. It is essential to share the benefits for African populations and the treaty on plastics in Nairobi. We must absolutely make a proposal, and we must be strong in terms of propositions for the eradication of plastics in the oceans. We must, for the SDGs in general, we know that the high-level panel on SDGs in the month of July will focus on the ODD 14. We must have a vision. When we talk about ocean governance, not only focus on the SDG 14, but have an integrated vision of the SDGs. And I believe that in Lisbon, and I am saying this because my dear Minister of the Sea, Portuguese, Ricardo Santos is here. We must have a common proposal, EU-Africa in Lisbon. This is a reminder of the appeal I made during the One Ocean Summit. We must strengthen the governance. We must strengthen the African governance of the ocean, and on the African and the European level, we must have ocean objectives at the Parliament. In a few minutes, I will speak during a plenary session on marine energies, and I will ask for us to have a debate about the sea before the Lisbon summit. It is very important for the ocean to be part of the Parliament, and we also must, about ocean and climate, there's a major theme, and it is blue carbon. In the deliverables of One Ocean Summit, Colombia and France have launched a coalition for blue carbon to finance the restoration of the ecosystem, like mangroves, the big algae, the coastal areas. The European Union, which is not in the coalition, must join the coalition. In Africa and African countries, I believe there's only Gabon, because Gabon, there's the basin, no, Congo, sorry, this is a mistake. Congo, I believe, or I have a doubt, I'm sorry, but African countries must join the coalition for blue carbon. We must make a mapping, and these are things that have been announced. There is also an important topic, I'm coming back to plastics now. The armament manufacturers committed not to send waste that are sent towards, often towards African countries to be treated there. So these are different things that were decided upon, and there's a great dynamics, which was a big momentum. And I believe that in our relationships, oceans must be at the heart of the agenda.
Thank you very much. I mean, you may not have seen while you're speaking, but you know, Josefa, Nancy, Ricardo are all nodding their heads, thinking, yes, you're saying the right things. You know, because actually, sometimes, as you named it, for change to happen, you need to name someone to be accountable and responsible for it. And it can't be sitting all over the place. While it is a cross-cutting agenda, as you say, nominate someone to have the power to take it forward, make the Parliament accountable for it, and we wish you luck for your plenary conversation very shortly, but also doing open democracy differently. You're in a car with others, going to Strasbourg, giving us a live sense of democracy that's now possible virtually. So no, thank you very much. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to keep with us, but you've made a number of really interesting points. Really, you have. And I think the notion of blue carbon coalition is one very important way forward. But as I say, and as you've heard, the issue of political engagement of it in a way that understands the circumstances and the conditions for both continents is going to be key. And we can't be doing things that actually somehow Europe has governance, ocean governance sorted, and Africa doesn't. We know that's not the case. It is about starting from a base of commonality, as you say, but also the interesting point you made, which I was waiting for someone to, is the African, shipping and ocean waters, fishing oceans, are not just about what happens around Europe. It's international. Yeah. As you referred, the Chinese are there and others are there. And it is a continent that everyone wants a piece of, but rarely wants to be accountable for. You wanted to come back.
Yeah, just to mention a point, because I had 2 calls for action during this One Ocean Summit. And the first one was on the ocean governance at the global level. And we call for 3 main issues. The first one is the recognition of the ocean as a common good. We are calling for the individual and collective responsibility. And I think all our friends from Africa and the EU should call to put this notion of inside in the preamble of the future treaty on the BBNJ. The second thing is we call for the creation of an IPCC for ocean. Excuse me, I have no more lights. I have to open the
Be safe, though. Be safe. Come on, it's okay.
We are still in the parking. And
okay, that's okay.
We call for the creation of an IPCC for ocean. And the third thing is not the name of an ocean cup, but it looks like an ocean cup. It's something that's a place where citizens, not only jurists, not only political, should share ocean issues on a integrated vision. So it has been wonderful, fantastic for us, because we had the opportunity in Brest to launch those calls at a global level. So yes, I'm very proud of that. Thank you very much.
You should be. No, thank you. And thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you very much. And clearly, the sense of oceans as a common good is absolutely key, as you say, but also having some sort of IPCC process around it, just to be focused. And perhaps, you never know, the task force that was referenced and announced at the beginning of this meeting by the Commissioner might be a useful way in which you bring all of that together and have a task force with a dedicated IPCC panel on oceans and oceans governance. So let's see what comes of it. Thank you very, very much. I now want to turn to, again, I want to go back to an African perspective, and I've got the Secretary General of the African Confederation of Artisanal Fishing Trade Associations, and Gasau, if I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Do correct me. Can you hear me? We can't hear you. There we go.
Vous ne m'entendez pas? C'est bon?
You can't hear me? Is it okay now?
So we can hear you.
D'accord. Donc, je me nomme Gaussou Gueye.
My name is Gaussou Gueye. I'm the president of the African Confederation of Artisanal Fisheries based in Senegal. I am Senegalese. I am the continental coordinator platform of non-state actors at continental level. I would like to thank you, first of all, for inviting us as a professional organization that we can express our opinions. So 2022 was declared as the International Year of Fisheries. It's a great opportunity in Africa, 200 million Africans, and this is about 75% as a sector in Africa with the jobs that are created. If Europe and Africa would like to unite their forces, the best way of doing so is to implement it through their policies and partnership for sustainable fisheries. As I was saying, there were priority actions that Europe and Africa had common interest in. The first priority, which is linked to SDG 14, is priority to coastal areas and right of access for artisanal fishing. And Europe also showed its will to access those who fish in a sustainable manner, which contributes to local economies. In Africa, a lot of countries would like to have an area dedicated to artisanal fishing, as it is not protected well enough. Earlier, you spoke about illegal fishing. So we want to give access to these coastal areas for artisanal sustainable fishing. And this needs to be reflected in the relations for fisheries in Europe and Africa. And we want to have concrete actions in order to manage sustainably these coastal areas with tools in common and protected areas to promote a participative approach. And I'd like to highlight this. Those who are involved in artisanal fishing. And I think having information to share is essential for this. We need to be consulted. In Eastern Africa, we need to prioritize use of the resource for this consumption. We also need to value the role of women in the sector, in artisanal fishing. They live in difficult conditions. They often work more than 10 hours in a row per day, often with their babies with them. They are showing innovation and they would like to see their living conditions improved. So for those who see these women working in the field, this could be their wives or their daughters working in these conditions. So it's not a privilege. We should make sure that these women work in decent conditions. The first thing that women need is to have enough and good quality fish. For instance, in Congo or the Ivory Coast or in Kenya, women find solutions for that. They often start with the production of vegetables and they are making sure to complement times where they cannot do any fishing. So these women who have a lot of initiatives should be supported. And for sub-Saharan Africa, from 2021 to 2027, the ocean and fisheries should be supported with civil society organizations. Women have an inclusive approach, and we would like to work with the associations in the field of fishing, with the operators of private sector in value chains, in agriculture and fishing. with artisanal fishing, and our organization is essential in order to improve the impact of European funding. A lot of us have noticed that there isn't enough control to use the products in an efficient way. There are all types of pledges, but nothing is done for the communities. The issue isn't just at the level of the follow-up of the projects, but also at the level of the definition of those projects. The national administrations don't always know the fishing industry well enough, or artisanal fishing, and the participants need to help with this definition. The implementation of projects supported in the framework of EU African Union projects. We need to build this capacity, and we hope that it will be an opportunity for artisanal fishing in Africa to be supported. These communities are concerned currently of competition, the blue economy, the development of tourism, and today you talk about plastics. We have the impression that there are a lot more plastics than there are fish in the sea currently. And no activities for the use of these oceans should be supported by the technical and financial partners if it has a negative impact on the ecosystem. We need to make sure there are transparent mechanisms to ensure conflict resolution at the level of the coasts, to make sure that the fishing communities that are impacted are involved. Africa and Europe, as you know, have interests in common to support artisanal fishing in Africa. All the examples of concrete actions I presented when it comes to the partnerships and projects in fishing, the involvement of professionals and civil society through transparent mechanisms is essential. The EU and the African Union are aware that actors need to be involved, and we need to reinforce artisanal fishing with bilateral agreements and programming of projects in order to improve the results. We are ready to be involved in those projects, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate.
Powerful set of messages that you've delivered, and it's the beauty of this discussion, the kinds of discussions that we put on at the Africa EU Foundation, is to bring your voice in, because actually it's really good to hear directly from the Association of Artisanal Fisheries and Small Holdings about the power you have to be an agent for supporting and addressing the impact of climate change, but as you say, having more safe, exclusive zones to support your endeavor as you are able to be more sustainable. How do you finance that? How do you make sure that it doesn't become corrupt, but it's more transparent? And that very important point you make about women and women in the marketplace and women involved and the degradation of their employment, if you like, in various ways. So thank you for bringing a number of those, I suppose, spotlights of the experience you have, but also, I think most importantly, the opportunity by maintaining a coalition such as yours is going to hasten and hearten a much more inclusive approach, but also one which is, anchored in history. Because the way you fish, the way you have been, is much more about the history of Europe, but of Africa, and you've been able to be sustainable. So thank you very much for your contribution. Let's hope both in the task force that's been referred to, but also in the ocean ocean conference that's happening later on in the year, that your kind of perspective is brought in because you bring in a sharp view as to how this might be taken forward. Thank you very much for your contribution, sir. I'm now going to move over to Sweden. And Helen, you've been very patient. Thank you for joining us. You are the ambassador for the ocean at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Helen, you've been listening to a lot so far. You've been involved in the field for over 20 years, okay? In this, working around this. Do you have a sense of hope? I mean, people talked about this being, the decade, the moment. There's a lot more momentum than we've seen before on the ocean. This is my question to you directly, is that, are you more hopeful that we're likely to see more change in the next 10, 15 years than what we've seen in the past 40, despite international regulations, conferences like this, etc.? Are you more hopeful?
Thank you. First of all, Honourable Commissioner Sinkevicius, Commissioner Sacco, Minister Serrao Santos, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and all you who are watching. It's nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me to this event, and I'm humbled to be part of such a distinguished and knowledgeable panel. First of all, I think we need to recognize the severity of the situation. We are in the midst of a triple planetary crisis. The climate is changing at an increasing pace. We are losing biodiversity faster than ever before, and our air, land, waters, and ocean are choked with litter and pollution, causing millions of premature deaths every year. So this crisis alters the preconditions for life on this planet, whether it be plants, animals, or humans. So, and at the same time, we have the economic effects of the pandemic that have thrown back hundreds of millions of people back into poverty, and the gaps between rich and poor have widened. So I think we need to look at the development of international ocean governance in this context. We must strengthen ocean governance, and there is no way to do that without bringing people together, building trust, getting inspired by one another, and by sharing, working, and creating together. And the learning and experience sharing is not a one-way street. It's not a highway from north to south, but I think we need to look at this as rather a plaza or marketplace where high-tech developers, traditional knowledge, institutional experts, science, and citizens can come together and form the solutions for a healthier planet, resilient communities, health, and prosperity. So the blue economy, for example, must be built on ocean protection and conservation, on sustainable use of resources and inclusion. And then it can contribute substantially to the transformation to carbon neutrality, nature positive, equitable, and a sustainable world. So the proposal to establish an EU-Africa Blue Task Force is very timely. We need increased collaboration, and we need action, and we need it now. So an ocean governance framework should be rights-based and promote gender equality and contribute to poverty eradication, and as such contribute to every person's right and opportunity to live a decent life. But it's also imperative that it deals with transboundary issues and supports regional organizations with a mandate to manage marine resources and the environment. Sweden values highly the regional cooperation in the Baltic Sea and the Northeast Atlantic through HELCOM and OSPAR, and we also support the work of the Nairobi and Abidjan conventions, as well as intersectoral work between UNEP and FAO and regional institutions like the African Union IBAR and IGAD. So Sweden also supports the Marine Regions Forum, a platform to facilitate transformations towards integrated ocean governance for marine regions. And together with the EU Commission, the Nairobi Convention, and a country in Eastern Africa, we will host the next Marine Regions Forum with a focus on Western Indian Ocean in 2022, by the end of 2022 or 2023. So ocean governance and development of a sustainable blue economy also relies on assessment of cumulative impact by different sectors, increased collaboration, and active search for synergies between different sectors. It also requires policy coherence, breaking silos, and institutions that are ready and capable to handle opportunities offered by an expansion of the blue economy, but more equally important, the risks and challenges. So the increasing understanding that no SDG can be delivered in isolation also highlights the need for the ocean community to address the linkages to land-based pollution, water governance, and climate change adaptation to increase poor and vulnerable communities' livelihoods, well-being, and resilience. And just finally, I would like to mention that Sweden is engaged in numerous collaboration with African partners through SIDA, through the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, universities, technical institutions, as well as civil society organizations. And the collaborative work includes developing frameworks for addressing gender and poverty in marine spatial planning. It includes source-to-sea management and investigation of links between flood management and the blue economy. It includes investments in regional scientific collaboration, in fisheries transparency, and much more. And we are willing and ready to continue our work and to strengthen collaboration with African partners and EU colleagues. Thanks.
Helen, thank you very much. But can I just test you one little bit? Because you weren't able to, you were being diplomatic, but are you more hopeful than you were before in terms of where we find ourselves?
Well, we find ourselves in a very difficult situation, but I see increasing will to collaborate from many partners, and ocean brought up higher on the political agenda, which is really good. But we really need to speed up, because we still continue with unsustainable consumption and production patterns. So we really have to be courageous and enter into a sustainability path. And when we explore the blue economy, I mean, I think we need to face that it's not oil and gas exploitation in the sea. That's the future. It's wind, wave, and other types of renewable energies.
Indeed. Thank you. We've just lost you momentarily, but that was excellent. Thank you very much. It's helped because I think, listening to Gusau from the, the Trade Association for Artisanal Fishing, I thought the image he left us with about the fact that, fishermen or people who are involved in artisanal fishing are picking up more plastic than they are fish. That's a powerful message to all of us, surely, that we need to get a grip and move quickly on this. And actually, any number of frameworks and agreements are not going to shift the dial on this, and we need to act almost more urgently if we take to heart that someone on the ground that's actually involved saying that I'm picking up more plastic than fish is a wake-up call and an alarm bell on a mega scale. But thank you very much for your contribution. I'm now going to turn to Ajani. Ajani, thank you for being with us. You've been very patient. You're last but not least. It's really good to have you with us. You've been, a high achiever from a very young age. And, you've been in politics. You're now currently, if I get this right, advisor to the president of Angola, and you're yourself former Minister of Environment. And you've won the African winner of the United Nations Environment Programme Youth Champions of the Earth. Goodness. And you look 12, for goodness sake. You're, wonderful. They've been really great to have you with us. And I'm really interested in your perspective in terms of, you've been listening to a lot of this. You've been in politics yourself. My question to you, like I have been telling others, is that Are you more hopeful? Are you more cynical? What do you see the roots of improvement and development that, from your perspective, would make a difference, given it's the younger generations that are either going to inherit a degraded planet or a planet in which they can survive? Over to you, Ajani.
Well, thank you for having me here. I hope everyone sees me as looking 12 years old.
I couldn't resist that. It's because I'm so old. That's why. Go for it.
Let me first just congratulate the Africa-European Foundation and the European Commission for this very insightful debate. I mean, having all of these various opinions and views on the ocean governance is very inspiring and motivating. So that partially answers your question, but I think the real answer is we have to be motivated. And the real reason is that before we were talking about the future and now we're actually talking about the present. So we don't have a choice but to be motivated. We have to find motivation somehow to make sure that we have a future now, that we and all of the biodiversity and all our economies have a future. So we do have to be motivated. We don't have a choice. And I think, as you've asked as well, youth has a big role in it because we are a major stakeholder in the entire process, especially when you think about Africa, where some people believe that by 2030, 75% of our population is going to be under 35 years old.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
Ignoring youth is ignoring a majority of Africa, and we have a big role to play in the whole process of governance in general, especially in the ocean. So it's not just our loud voice, because we can be loud, and it's not just our will to push things forward and bash through walls, but it's our heritage to take on. And it's not just inheriting a broken planet, as you mentioned, but also all of the policies that we have to take on, and everything that will be following on that is established right now. And with that in mind, I think youth can play an extremely important role in all steps of ocean governance process, from the decision making, bringing the ambition and the possibility of innovation without undermining, obviously, how realistic and feasible things have to be, through the design of policy to assure that it's not only applicable, but comprehensive and inclusive, and also to assure that it is effective and wide-ranging enough that we, at a further scale, can push it up geographically and on the long term. And especially on its application, I think this is where youth can and it has already been very important, playing a very important role, because bringing awareness, mobilizing the different components of society and reporting. Governments cannot do all. Private sector cannot do all. So I think as being important stakeholders, we can help instead of being seen as the obstacle here. And also our expectations are pretty much the same as every other stakeholder. We're just enhancing it to a little bit because we are the ones taking the consequence from it, both positive and negative. So the inclusion of stakeholders is very important, and it's an important expectation from all of this dialogue. As you mentioned before, just hearing all of these different opinions and making sure they are accounted for in the decision-making process. Also, the equity of benefits. It's an important thing to mention here, from a local to a global perspective, from the direct users of the oceans to the global benefiters of the oceans. And obviously, as usual, sustainability, but sustainability at all levels, not just environmental, not just economic, but also social. And I think it's time to realize and think through all of the approaches that have been seen here, heard here. It is, apologies, it is important to realize that though specific portions of the ocean are, let me use the word, assigned to specific nations that are sovereign, the ocean in its generality is a global asset and a global resource. It has been mentioned here over and over again. Yes, it is true, and it will come over the different dialogues, that European countries, as other countries, explore African oceans in different ways: food, transportation, fuel, multiple ecological services, and they're also the main supporters of protection and preservation of our oceans. We ourselves also benefit from the global ecosystem surface and benefits, but it goes a lot much more beyond that. Because if you think of pollution and climate change, oceans are the proof that there are no borders. So it's a common goal that we all should have, despite all of the exploration or not that we want to conduct in these oceans. So whatever happens somewhere is felt everywhere. So I think if we could summarize the expectation of all of this ocean governance dialogue is, and you've said it already, alignment. Having a shared agenda for shared resources. It's a cross-continental approach to maintaining and governing our oceans, an overall joint approach to management of its resources and its potential. And this includes not only shared and equitable benefits of the exploration of resources amongst the nations involved and its people, but most importantly, shared accountability of this management, of both the exploration and the protection. So obviously, always respecting sovereignty and the added responsibilities of the different countries. So in the end, alignment is key for everything, pretty much.
Anjali, thank you. Refreshing, thoughtful, and thank you for taking my kind of comment in the spirit intended. But you make some interesting points about this faux notion of sovereignty. It does make you think, really, given where we find ourselves. Okay, there are security matters, which hasn't been raised in this conversation, because nations guard their security, and those the waters, the ocean is a key place for security, peace and defence for both continents. Probably in a way that's not been raised here today. But the point you make about the fact that in a very short period of time, young people will be the majority population in Africa, right? We know that. But my concern is that we'll wake up to that reality a little bit too late, and rather than think now. So I wanted to pose a direct question to you. I've been doing a lot of these debates with Africa EU young people over the past 18 months. And, one of the biggest issues that come up time and time again is that having a seat at the table, or a number of seats at the table, which is about not only being patronized because you're just a young person, but being involved in the dialogue and problem solving and solution making. And it seems that more so than ever anywhere else in the globe, Africa matters. African youth matter now into the future in terms of policy making. So if you were to ask, you've got some excellent. You've got the minister from Portugal. You've got the Kenyan politician and others. What do you want from in terms of youth involvement for the Ocean Governance Conference that's happening? I know that's a big question, but what would this happening soon? It's happening this year. And what do you want in terms of Africa EU summit next week in terms of actual youth engagement? Over to you.
It's actual listening and participation. So I think nowadays there's a big wave into bringing youth into the discussion, but to not actually listen to youth. I think we have the power to bring in a fresh view of things that might actually help, might not just be a naive way of looking at things. And I think politics looks a lot to youth because of the lack of experience to a certain level, that they're very, very, very eager to do things that they're not applicable to politics. But sometimes we can bring certain views that are necessary to push things a little bit more forward than they are right now. Sometimes what we say can make sense in some way. It's bringing in that point of view of the dynamics of everything that we can bring into the table, and actually listening to what youth has to say. And as you mentioned, and a lot of people mentioned as well, having different pairs of eyes is important, whether they are of a different age, whether they are of a different background, whether they are of a different citizenship, is listening to what they have to say and seeing if it applies or not, because a lot of the things might not apply. So you just put them to the side. However, it's opening up to the possibility of us being part of the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And, there's been a lot of questions, from people that have been listening and watching this around, how do you improve the cooperation between Africa? What does that actually mean? What does an enabling environment actually mean for, let's say, small to medium enterprises like smallholding farms, artisanal farmers, etc., and the inclusion of women, etc., and so forth. But I suppose at the end of the day, this conversation is taking place right now, obviously, because it wants to feed into what will happen next week. but also in the months and the years to come. And there is obviously a youth track currently within the Africa EU Week. And tomorrow I'll be moderating a session with young people as well. So there is that kind of, there's a live debate. But I think, as I've heard many times before, it's going from the good words into actual meaningful action and inclusion, as you say, in a way that's not patronizing. So thank you all. But I want to bring back some of our speakers in terms of what you've heard and commented, because as I said, there are many questions about, we keep on talking about more cooperation, more effective cooperation. What does that mean in real terms? When we think about enabling environment, what does that actually mean in practical terms? So what would be the thing that needs to happen to do for that to happen? And any other main takeaways that you may have. So can I, as I've got you in my eye, Ricardo, can I come to you first in terms of your response to what you've heard so far?
Thank you very much. And let me also to give special greetings that I did to Nancy, to Helen, to Catherine, to Gauss, and to Janet. It was very instructive to listen to you all, and the issues about youth. Youth is also okay. The future is more for the young people, of course. And I see that the movements and the engagement of young people in many areas of the blue world, the ocean, is increasing. And now recently I have had some meetings, these virtual meetings, on the future of the blue careers. This is very important for the young, because we need a sustainable ocean, a healthy ocean, but an ocean that is also productive and that gives jobs. And I believe that all these that Africa declared on this agenda 2063 declares the blue economy to be Africa's future. And I would like to remember that last year, the European Investment Bank took steps to strengthen the African and European partnership, unlocking cooperation and investments in sustainable blue economy. And these policies are stronger if linked to initiatives as the Africa Blue Economy Strategy, and to constructive dialogues that we need to have. And these dialogues should include and motivate young people, because these young people, as the far as they become organized, also motivated policies. And the problems we are facing, just we can talk about pollution or habitat destruction or whatever, are serious problems that in fact compromise the development of blue economy in Africa and as elsewhere. And these environmental concerns, the technical economic barriers in Africa countries that they face to the market and to the weakness of the socio-economical, educational, scientific and technological structures, which restrict some efforts to attain the development, the need on a blue economy. And therefore, the fact is that we need to cooperate to find and implement the proper mechanisms to give Africa the much required and fair opportunity to join the future with strengths. And the fact is that the world cannot progress toward a sustainable economy in society without Africa.
Indeed.
And this is a point that, so you mentioned also what's up with the youth in the conference that we are organizing with Kenya. Well, one of the most important side events just before the conference, initiating the conference, is a side event on the youth and the blue world and the blue economy. And I hope this creates, in fact, a platform that we engage for the issues of new careers, new jobs, and the all the recommendations that the EU has to give as politicians in view to create and solve of turning to become the ocean healthy, but also productive. That's what we need. And let me, okay, that's what it.
Ricardo, thank you. I didn't want to kind of butt in. If you had a further concluding remark, please do so. But I was just simply acknowledging your contribution and saying thank you for responding effectively, but also looking forward to your stewardship of the joint Portuguese-Kenyan conference on the ocean governance, that actually seeing some of these issues. You brought up illicit fishing. We know there's a youth agenda here. We know actually we need a policy coherence and alignment. And we look forward to your leadership together with Nancy in making sure there is a much more of a coherent, policy-aligned approach to this issue. Thank you. So I want to know if Nancy is still there, or Josefa.
Josefa is still around.
Hello.
Thank you.
May I ask you, hello, thank you. We just welcome your comments and feedback on what you've taken away from this conversation so far before I ask some of the others also as I tie up this very vibrant conversation. Joseph, over to you.
Thank you. My take in this conversation is that we got a lot of feedback from the initial question why ocean must be placed at the core of the Africa-Europe partnership. We got a lot of information, and we are convinced that it is really very important. We have put it really on the table. Unfortunately, we are going to have a EU summit. This issue of the blue economy is not really very clear on the agenda or annex of the political declaration. So it's a pity, because we believe that mostly for us, Africa, in my department, when we had a conversation with the EU, the EU ambassador in Addis Ababa, we put blue economy, as core, for discussion, but we don't see it reflecting on the agenda that we are going to be discussed during this summit. I also like to appeal to our partners, EU, to come closer to the African Union to work together. From experience I have for 5 years as a commissioner in this in African Union Commission, I have a very good working relationship with the Commissioner for Agriculture, and we came out with this task force on agriculture. It exists. So we have the rural Africa. This rural Africa was endorsed in 2019 in Rome among the 2 colleges of ministers of education and agriculture from EU and ministers of agriculture from Africa, AU. So this task force is there. I'm afraid to say that I don't know where we are going with this task force that we want to create on the blue economy, because the agriculture task force is there. It's not also in the agenda for this summit. Instead of it to be in the agenda and for us to leverage, and track progress on what did we do since 2019 when we had the EU-AU summit in Abidjan. So that's what we are talking about. The instruments are there, things are there. But, most of the scene, I think one of the panelists said, is financial access to finance, because we know what we want. We know where we want to arrive. But once you don't have the investment in that area, your tools, all the frameworks will just be lying on your shelter in your office, and you're not implementation. So for me, my taken here is really to implement. Let us implement the rural Africa. Let us implement this task force. It's very important, and let it be participative. Because when we did the rural task force with the EU, it was participative. This is my first time I'm hearing about this task force and all these the feasibility study that was presented here. So I think I will appeal to our colleagues, our partners, to really work together, better coordination and action, action drive attitude. And thank you.
Thank you for those powerful remarks. And a reminder, a relationship has to be worked on and has to be nurtured, and trust has to be built. And, you know, we're in a different pathway now as we have ever been before. And, you know, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Commissioner, but my sense is that this is very much a focused look at ocean governance as opposed to a broader rural agenda. And, you know, as I pushed him, I said, I was the one who pushed him to say, so what are you going to do about it? So he made the announcement in the terms he did. So I'm sure if he'd had more time, he would have made sure that it was done in a different way. But I'm pleased to hear that we have it. But as you say, you reminded us of some of the relationship ticks that we need to get right in the EU-Africa spectrum. And you're quite right to point out, as you said so many times before, we need action and not more frameworks. And let's hope that the task force that's been announced will be very much action-oriented. But thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to go to Catherine. If you're still there, looking down with pen in hand, very studious, you're giving us this real sense of you on the move. Give us your take on what you've heard so far. What are your reflections?
Yeah, I've been very interested. I didn't know about the task force. I think it's a great idea, and I think we have to take it and to. I will be very interesting to work. I'm in the Committee of Development, Environment and Fisheries at the cross of all the ocean topic, and I'm trying to push not an ocean committee, but something not very far. I think we had to push the task force in the implementation of the Starfish mission. Have you heard about, you know, the mission on the ocean which will be implemented in the Europe Horizon program, you know.
That's right.
And I think to highlight this task force in the Starfish mission should be a good idea. About young people and women, I've been very interesting. You know, I'm working because of what I've seen in Guinea-Bissau, what I've seen in Senegal when I've been, and I worked on those fisheries agreements. It's that those agreements are, I think, useful for the populations, but they are not very well implemented. And the financial part use, it does not really go to the women, to the young fishermen, etc. And I think they should be a good tool to help women and populations, but they are not. I think we have, and I don't know what Ricardo is thinking about that, but I think we should try to have a better implementation, and of those.
Okay.
And last thing, I've realized that it will be the same in Africa. We need to make all African citizens conscious that awareness, to strengthen awareness of all citizens of Africa, that they have a connection with the ocean, not only the populations who are living near the coastal areas. And finally, I would like to say a word on the MPAs, and I visited an air marine communautaire in the Senegal, and it's a very useful tool, I think, for the development, for the preservation, for the ocean and climate issues. We should develop that kind of MPAs that are managed by local communities. Thank you. And thank you very much for this very interesting event.
Catherine, we look forward to listening to your endeavours. As you said, you're at this nexus of both development, but also on fisheries and other matters. So hopefully we can see the development of a much more I wouldn't say sophisticated, but joining the dots across development and marine approach and oceans governance, etc. A more, I suppose, what we've heard constantly is that we need a different ecology that develops around this, which is much more cutting across a range of policy areas, because without that, we'll end up going down a cul-de-sac and it won't actually work. And we'll just end up repeating history. So thank you very much. I want to bring in just finally, if I may, because I'm running out of time, colleagues who've not had the opportunity to come back in. Is that Gusu? If I've pronounced your name right again, I do apologize. You made a very powerful comment, a set of commentaries around what it is for your association and the people you represent. What's your reflection on what you've heard? Do you feel more hopeful, or are you just thinking that actually this has been just more fine words?
Merci.
Thank you. No, these are not just words. And when you talk about governance of fisheries, when we think of sardinelle, that's something that's very important for African populations. These are threatened. These are species that are threatened because of foreign ships, whether from Asia or European ships. So we must try to see how we can support them to have our countries to have a concerted management of these fisheries in Western Africa. And as I said before, the MPAs, protected areas, in Senegal, there's an initiative of the communities. It's one initiative. It comes from the communities. They suggest another way of managing oceans from an ecological point of view, from the point of view of resources, where administrations, research, everybody participates. And they create partnerships. They all take part. So we need to privilege this participation and actions of the European Union. We need to have the base see that something is being done. And there is a communication form that needs to be changed. If I take the example of the Chinese who just built roads, for example, or if we look at the markets, and they are fishing in an extraordinary manner. There's no control. It's through mixed companies. There is no information that is conveyed. When we talk about transparency, we would need to have access to this information, but we do not have access to information. In our countries, if we talk about Senegal, we have 140 boats traveling on our seas. When you talk about artisans, we must see that these are European, they say it's European boats, but it is not the case. And we need to put in place a strategy of communication for populations to understand that the agreement, a fishing agreement that exists with Europe,
Again, I'm glad I brought you back. Sorry, in English? Because my French wouldn't stretch to that in terms of actually my comprehension is great, but my speaking is crap. But I'm so glad that I brought you in that you brought that sense of, again, reality check of moving from, just initiatives, but actually better assurances, greater and more strategic communications to actually bring people on board, but also make visible these actions, but also be more inclusive of those at the sharp end of this agenda. So thank you very much for coming. I'm not sure if Nancy's still here, but I see Catherine's hand up before I go to Helen. You want to come back in?
Oui, very short, very short. Je voudrais réagir à ce que
I would like to react to what the gentleman just said, because when I traveled to Guinea-Bissau and to Senegal to see how the money coming from the European Union was used, and when we talk about the Great Green Mural, the European Union is very present, but the problem is it doesn't communicate on what it does. It's more present than the Chinese. The Chinese are very visible there, but the European Union is also, and it has more means, and unfortunately there's a problem of visibility, and it must highlight its actions. Maybe it should have a more strategic approach of its presence on the field, on the territory. And I believe that the European Union is doing more than is visible. So we must check and we must double our efforts so that the money coming from the European Union really goes to these fishing areas. Otherwise, we could wonder about the relevance of the agreements we are signing with the African countries.
Taking up the mantle of, responding directly, taking your accountability seriously, and explaining it without actually being bolshy. So you've actually set it out really well, and with humility about the European project and its difficulties as well sometimes in this regard. So thank you very much for coming back on that. I want to now go to Helen and then wrap up. And Johnny, if you want to come and say a few words, I'll bring you in right at the end. But Helen, back over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think it has been a very inspiring discussion here, and that we could say that increased collaboration between EU and Africa has to be built on and continue to be strengthened regarding policy alignment and collaboration in development of international legal frameworks and governance, for example, when it comes to new plastic agreements or a treaty to protect biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, etc. But then we also need to implement the legislation and frameworks and rules that we have put in place. And then we need practical collaboration and to develop the tools and methods, technologies and institutions that can handle these issues and put it into practice on the ground in our countries. So we need to work on both those areas, I think, in our strengthened collaboration. And finally, I want to say also that I think youth have a tremendously important role, can play a really important role when it comes to building trust between nations. For youth to refuse the polarization between political systems in East and West, and try and really build connections and work together for the greater good of humanity. Thank you.
Well said, Helen. Well said. Thank you very much. But that you're absolutely right. There is that potential. But I suppose most institutions and politicians and agencies really need to put their money where their mouth is in terms of youth inclusion in decision making and policy making. Otherwise, you know what it's like. It becomes fine words that echo and ricochet, but never change anything. On that note, Ajani, your final words to you.
Thank you. Well, very briefly, I think this dialogue has brought up, obviously, that there is active engagement and will from the different stakeholders across Europe and Africa. And there's also a lot of common concerns, which is a good start of dialogue. However, I think it is also clear there's still a lot of work to do, and we can't forget or dismiss that. We need to run, we need to sprint, and we need everyone from every background. Politicians, researchers, field workers, entrepreneurs, activists, local communities, just everyone. This is not a generational or cross-stakeholder competition, and we don't have time to engage in that. The first step is to talk, but not at each other, but to each other. We all have our interests to protect, political, social, environmental, economical, but we need to understand that everyone needs to compromise so we can reach balance. The ideal cross-continental integrated governance and management vision is cored in compromise. It is meant to be uncomfortable for everyone involved. If everyone is perfectly comfortable, there is probably something wrong with it. We need to acknowledge that the future has arrived, and unfortunately the predictions were right and were even light. So let's talk and let's listen, but let's urgently act and implement at the different levels, be ambitious but yet realistic, and mobilize the resources, financial, political, human, every resource that we can get.
Johnny, I'm glad I brought you in last. Wise, sage, mature thinking, they're very sensitive to the actual realities of politics. And, clearly we're witnessing a future global leader on our screens here. Good luck to you. But thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here with us. One of the things that I hope this does is provide kind of a freshness of thinking into the summit for next week. It's very easy. You have these conversations and then things kind of move away. But there is the EU summit between 17th and 18th of February. And we hope that this dialogue, this thinking, this sense of both need for, as you say, compromise, but urgency and actual action are woven into that conversation and debate. I hope you feel that one of the things that we like to do here at the Africa EU Foundation is to provide the space, safe space for this kind of dialogue, and to bring in alternative voices, but also take a 360-degree view of the issue, as I hope you feel that we have done so today, but also to make sure that we give a sense of independence, in that we make sure we absolutely guarantee both an African and an EU voice in our deliberations, because it absolutely is essential. And as was pointed out by Josefa, this is about relationship building. And as you said, Johnny, we have to think about compromise communication and actually realize this has to be a different deal, because it matters to both of us, all of us, actually. It's too critical. So let's hope that, you know, in the announcement by Varidis, in the Commissioner, the EU Commissioner, that this new task force, this new action-oriented task force, has joint ownership, that it's inclusive, that both continents feel a sense of engagement from the onset, and that it's diverse. So let's hope and wish them well. We're really pleased as the foundation that will be taking forward some of this issue. We will ensure our best that we will live up to our commitments to have that sense of balance and ownership and inclusiveness, because that's what this foundation is about, is to generate a very different climate and atmosphere around EU-Africa relations, but with actual practical results and action and outcomes as we move forward. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank all our partners, the European Commission, yourselves, the Portuguese government, and you know, the partners from across both Africa and Europe for this, and for your patience. It's been 2 hours, and look how time flies when you're having energetic conversation. Colleagues, thank you all. And those of you who've been watching, this goes into posterity. It will be on the YouTube channel, but also on the Africa EU Foundation website. If those of you want to engage tomorrow, if you want to join me, I'll be here talking about young people in a number of contexts in terms of engaging around both climate and other matters. That'll be on, so follow the website to get more details. And all it leaves me to say is thank you all. Thank you for being engaging and responding to my challenging questions and making this, you know, something worthwhile. In terms of our use of our lives in part, you know, the 2 hours of our lives this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. So take care, be safe, and mind your distance. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.